Charge Blade, with good mobility in sword mode, excellent defense through blocks and guard points, huge burst damage through SADs, and built-in KO with Impact Phials, all of this and more have earned its reputation for being a very powerful and also very fun weapon. But how do you maximize the damage on your Charge Blade? Well, I'm JinJinx.
And I'm Tuna. And we're
the Monster Hunter Math Guys. And this is pre-Iceborne Charge Blade Meta Builds Part 1 Impact Phials.
The introduction of Kiara weapons have made Elemental Phial CBs competitive against certain matchups, and the 18 Nerg armor has straight up upgraded Belos Impact CBs. In this video, we'll be covering the updated sets for Impact Charge Blade. While we covered those sets a few months ago, again, they've improved. In our next video, we'll be covering the Elemental CBs along with a very special guest.
We will also be revisiting the mandatory Charge Blade skills that should be on every single Charge Blade set. We did already cover these in our previous Meta CB video. However, you may not have seen that, and so just in case, we will be retouching on them here. But before that, there are two quick things I want to talk about. First off, it has come to our attention that a lot of you who watch our videos here on the channel don't know that Tuna does stream on Twitch almost every day. He does focus mostly on Monster Hunter World, but he does also play other games on stream as well. We assume that a lot of you don't know about this because of the fact that we put it at the end of every video. But currently, Tuna is trying to become a Twitch partner, which will increase our Twitch revenue by a significant degree. And Tuna and I are equal partners in this business. We literally split everything. And if even 1/10 of the people who watch me stream Monster Hunter World when I rarely do it on YouTube watched him on Twitch instead, he'd already be a partner. So long story short, every video moving forward, we're going to be shilling Tuna's Twitch at the beginning of every video to see if that helps his numbers at all. Moving forward, the explanation won't be nearly as long as this one. But TLDR, go watch Tuna on Twitch. He is genuinely a much better streamer than I am, engages with the audience a lot better, does viewer hunts, answers questions, etc, etc. And like I said, in the future, we'll just keep this very short and simple at the beginning of videos. And the second thing I want to talk about is of course our standard quick disclaimer. All the builds, analysis, breakdowns, and literally everything we do on the channel are not meant to tell you how to play. Unless you are a speedrunner or care about max deeps, these are not the only way to play and we aren't suggesting that. The purpose of what we do is to educate and inform, is to give you the factual information on the relative strengths of different builds and playstyles so that you can make informed build decisions. This video series is meant to provide you with that information, not to state that that is how you should play. I wish I didn't have to keep saying this every video, but play how you like and enjoy yourself. It is a video game after all. So let's briefly cover the mandatory skills on Charge Blade. For Impact Phial Charge Blades, this is going to be Guard 1, Focus 3, Capacity Boost, Artillery 3, and Attack Boost 4. First off, Guard 1 is the minimum level of guard you want to run. The reason for this is it's the minimum necessary to be able to SAD off of pretty much every attack in the game. In order to be able to combo off of a block into an SAD, you have to have a medium or lower knockback from the attack you blocked. Now, the reason why Guard 1 is mandatory for this is because A, when you charge your shield on Charge Blade, your shield effectively becomes the same blocking power as a lance. And then B, when you guard point an attack, it gives you +2 effective guard level. There are many attacks in the game, including a lot of large monster roars, that if you only have guard level 2 with a lance shield, you will suffer more than a medium knockback from it. This is where guard level 1 comes into play, because with the +2 you get from guard pointing, you now turn a lot of these high knockback attacks into medium knockback attacks. For example, Diablos' and Bagel's Roar both give you a high knockback unless you have at least a lance shield with +3 guard. Guard 1 plus the guard point brings you there, so you can now SAD off of these rolls to get a free hit in. However, if you aren't comfortable guard pointing, then you can run guard 3 instead, and your regular blocks will still be able to get only medium knockbacks against these attacks. Now, the only exception to this is you may have to run guard 3 against Behemoth and Archetype Cove Taroth, because they have attacks that have so much knockback you need at least lance shield with guard 5 to be able to not get large knockbacks from them.
Focus 3 lets you charge more Phial energy per hit, and makes your charge slash faster. Most importantly though, it unlocks faster charge combos. With Focus 3, you can easily SAD 30 to 50% more frequently. Capacity Boost gives you an extra Phial. This makes your SAD have an extra Phial to it, increasing the Phial damage by 20%. Also, your charge shield lasts an extra 30 seconds. Artillery 3 is mandatory on Impact Phials CBs. It raises your Phial damage by almost 30%, which is insanely efficient for damage increases per skill point. 4 attack boost is the optimal level of attack boost to run due to how Impact Phial damage scales. We won't go in depth into CB math here, but we do have a video we've made explaining that already. Link to that in the top right. Alright, now that all of that's out of the way, here are the CB sets. There are 3 new variations of the meta Impact Phial sets with the introduction of Nergigante. If you don't have Nergigante armor, check out our previous Charge Blade video for those old sets. Link in the top right. All of these sets will be stronger in certain situations. While they'll deal the same Phial damage, the difference is the sharpness levels and corresponding EFRs. The explanation for when they're better than the other is a bit complicated, so we'll leave that until after the sets.
And yes, every single one of these uses the Diablos or the Taroth Horn Charge Blade. They are effectively the same, one is just gold and gives you a little extra defense. No other Impact Phial CB comes close to competing with them due to the way Phial damage is calculated. Again, we don't want to fully explain that in this video, so check out our Phial math video if you don't understand why the Blow/Horn Charge Blades are the best Impact Charge Blades.
First up is the No Handicraft set. Health Augment is recommended, as it heals up chip damage from guard points, and an SAD is basically a full heal. But for maximum damage, run a second attack augment instead to bump up your SAD Phial damage by 2 damage each, at 491.4 EFR with all standard attack buffs. This set will hit the hardest in blue out of all the sets. Keep in mind, no handicraft means no white and less blue. Lower blue sharpness means that if you ever bounce while in green, this set will struggle if you can't keep your sword charged. Despite that, this set is actually the best at longer fights like Arc Tempereds. We'll explain why after covering all the sets.
Next up is the Handicraft 3 set. This one has 3 handicrafts, so you get an additional 30 units of blue sharpness, effectively doubling the amount of blue you have over the no handy version. This drops the EFR in blue sharpness to 471 with Agitator active. Keep in mind this level of Agitator is free, which is the only reason we run it. Another level of crit boost would be ideal, but there's no way to fit that. And speaking of free skills, keep in mind that every single one of these builds is going to use the Nerg 3 set bonus of Hasten Recovery. But please do not misinterpret that as an intentional design choice. That set bonus sucks. You basically heal around 2/3 of a regular potions of healing every 7 hits, I think it is. I can't remember, it's been a while since testing it, but basically it's very bad. If I had the option of adding an extra attack boost instead of using the set bonus, we would do that. However, it turns out that using 3 pieces of Nergigante armor is what gives us the highest stats. So we get Hasten Recovery literally for free. That is the only time it's worth running. Now this particular build with 3 handicraft is the middle of the ground. It is always better than one while being worse than the other depending on situation. But it's also the one you'll almost always see speedrunners using, and we will explain why in a bit. Now you may be wondering, why do we stop at Handicraft 3 instead of just jumping into White Sharpness? Well, that's what the final build is for.
Our final set is slightly different. This one runs White Sharpness and Protective Polish. We opt for Protective Polish instead of a 5th level of Handicraft, because as long as you use at least 10 units of White Sharpness during the Polish's 1-minute timer, it's worth it. CB is unique in that the first 10 to 20 hits of a weapon are generally much weaker than the last hits. That's because you spend those first hits charging your shield and building Phials before you start your standard attack combo of spamming SAD. So Polish works out better for us because it lets us minimize the amount of White Sharpness loss during that initial ramp up. We don't bother with Item Prolonger 3 even though it would increase the White's uptime. The damage loss is just too high to try to justify the extra 30 seconds of Protective Polish. With Agitator active, this set hits 492.72 EFR. That's only 1.32 more EFR than the No Handicraft set.
And keep in mind, that's when the No Handicraft set is in blue sharpness. However, between the Protective Polish and the 4 Handicraft, this will stay in white and blue sharpness for much longer than the No Handicraft set. And keep in mind, going from blue sharpness to green sharpness is the biggest damage drop loss you get from sharpness loss until you get below yellow sharpness. And if you get below yellow sharpness with endgame meta sets, I don't know what to say. And keep in mind, the No Handicraft build only needs 30 units of sharpness loss to hit green sharpness.
This actually leads to the Polish set being the best set for shorter fights. But why is that the case? Well, To understand that, we need to look at what the average EFR of these sets looks like depending on how many units of sharpness we burn through. And for that, we have a rant by Jinx.
Math time! Okay, so to start off with, this is what each of the EFRs looked like at each set of 10 units of sharpness used up for each of the builds. This is purely for a baseline, so we are not yet including the polish uptime. As you can see, from 10 to 70, the highest bounces between each of the different builds. At 70 is where you can see all of the builds have dropped down to green sharpness. From this point on, the no handicraft build deals the most damage until 150 sharpness is used up. This is where that particular build drops down to yellow and falls behind the handy 3 set until the handy 3 set also drops to yellow at 180 sharpness used. From then on, the no handicraft set is the best. However, this is only absolute EFR at each point in time, not the actual total average over the hunt thus far. If we look at this average over the hunt, the no handicraft set looks the best from 20 to 40 units of sharpness used up. Basically, that's 30 units of blue and 10 units of green before the other builds catch up in average damage. Then from 50 to 90, the handy 3 set looks best, and then from 100 onwards, the no handicraft set once again looks best. However, this does not include polish uptime. Now this bit is a little difficult to calculate because it's entirely dependent on the skill of the player and the particular matchup how much sharpness you will save from the protective polish of 1 minute. But we'll go ahead and just assume you use 20 units of sharpness during the protective polish time. Between sword attacks, SAEDs, guard pointing, and time spent repositioning, an average of 1 sharpness used every 3 seconds is a fairly reasonable estimation. This adds effectively another 20 units of white sharpness to the polish build, so the averages look like this instead. Now the polish build looks insanely good. It has the highest EFR except at 60 units used up, where the handy 3 build wins for that small window. And from then on, it's still the best until you hit green sharpness for 30 units at 120 total units used. In other words, unless you take 120 units of sharpness to either kill the monster or before it transitions to a new area, the polish build just performs the best. However, if we want this to accurately represent what a hunt would really look like, we have to consider one more factor, which is weighting sharpness to damage. The reality is, not all sharpness use gives you the same damage output on Charge Blade. Now, it is very difficult to accurately simulate this as there are so many factors involved, but there is one time period that we know always has lower damage. That's the time when you first engage a monster and you have to charge your shield up and your phials. In other words, the initial ramp up we spoke about earlier. So, between charging your first 6 phials, charging your shield, charging your next set of phials, possibly having a guard point, a roar or attack or 2, we can estimate that you lose roughly 10 units worth of sharpness for good damage. It's probably lower than that, assuming you play cleanly, and higher than that, assuming you don't, but assuming 10 units lost makes it simpler for example purposes. So, by accounting for that by removing the first 10 units of sharpness lost from the EFR average calculations, we now have the most realistic model of all the average EFRs for each build. So polish is the best in the first 40 units of sharpness due to the protective polish uptime. Realistically, this is the absolute minimum amount of sharpness needed to kill a squishy monster that only needs roughly 4 SAEDs to die. That being said, it's also very difficult to get a run that clean. 50 to 60 is more realistic for very clean runs, at which point the Handicraft 3 set actually performs best. This is reason number 1 why most speedrunners run this set. Reason number 2 is that Protective Polish requires you to have to actually polish at the start of a run. Even if you use a Wetfish plus Fin, this still adds at least 2 to 3 seconds to your run. For competitive speedrunning, that 2 to 3 seconds in kill time will likely not be made up by the EFR gains you get from using the polish set instead. Now, from 70 to 110 sharpness, the polish build continues to be the best. At 120 sharpness, the no handicraft build is now the best and continues to be. This is the point at which the polish build has been in green sharpness for 30 units, and this averages out to it underperforming. Realistically, outside of extremely high hit point monsters like Behemoth and the Arctempered monsters, you won't hit 120 units of sharpness used before the monster either dies or goes somewhere else. But for those monsters, the no handicraft build is looking the best, assuming you won't have issues with low sharpness and potentially bouncing off the monster, which you honestly might. So to recap, Handicraft 3 is generally considered the best for quick and clean runs, Polish is better for slightly longer runs if your play isn't clean, and no handicraft is the best at really long hunts if you don't have to worry about bouncing due to being in lower sharpness levels. This all being said, the differences aren't that big, so just run whatever. Personally, I just run handy 3 because I really hate sharpening. And that about does it, guys. That is all of the new updated Impact Charge Blade sets. These will continue to be meta until Iceborne comes out. However, if you do not have the Octop and Nergigante armor you need to make these sets, I heavily recommend looking at our old Charge Blade meta video that covers the previous meta sets. And if you cannot make those or are looking for something a bit different, I heavily recommend checking out Tom/Boardwalk Hotel's website. He has literally every goddamn Charge Blade build you could ever possibly want, from poverty and starting builds to endgame meta builds. So be sure to check out his website as well as his channel, as he does also do a lot of Charge Blade speedruns. Link in the description and the top right for those. And also a huge thank you to HCZS. He is a Charge Blade speedrunner who kindly provided all the background footage for this video. He not only does a lot of TA runs, he also does a lot of naked runs because he's a madman. Be sure to check him out. Link to his channel is in the top right and the description.
As always, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Sharing it around really helps us out. If you made it this far, cats or dogs? Shout out to Honey at Honey Hunters World for providing the tools we use to make sets. If you're looking for like-minded hunters, you can check us out on our Discord server, the Mathalos Nest. You can also follow us on Twitter, where we post updates and other things that interest us. You can also follow me on Twitch, where I stream Monster Hunter and other games almost every day.
And if you'd like to help support us directly, the best way to do it is through our Patreon. And an especially big thank you to MC Persona, Foray, Yoshi Cho, David Sternberg, XCLK07, Haika, Milky Powder, David Zhu Sinclair, Warren Kios, Hensatsuken, Wed Manticore, Cap and Big Brain, Bram Orsul, Anti-Spartan, Lightweight, Jonathan Shore, PB Livingston, Jordan Petit, Skylar Yang, Checkleman, Lupin, Mongus, Kumiko, Triple Agent, Augusto Oliveira, Alan O'Dom, Baguette, Zimv, Billy Barthol, Magister Obscura, Jamie, and every single one of you who supports us on Patreon. Seriously, thank you guys all so much. We could not do what we do without you guys. The reality of our style of videos, they do take a lot of research time to make, which means that we have a very low turnover rate compared to other channels. You save us from having to do the clickbait daily upload style videos that YouTube really prefers. So thank you, y'all the best. Now we do have the Elemental Charge Blade sets coming out for you guys very soon with a special guest joining us. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to hear about that as soon as it comes out.
Until next time, happy hunting, hunters.
Bye!